So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jonnychipz in Conversation With. So, if you're joining us on the Friday night over on the Azure Live Twitch.tv channel, thanks so much for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below, and don't forget to give the channel a follow. Obviously, you get notified then next time we go live with some more content for you. Equally, if you are watching this over on YouTube on Catch Up, huge thanks for joining us. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome and hugely appreciated. Okay, so my next guest this week, he is based in Bradford in the UK. He's the co-founder of the cloud management community. He's hugely active across the cloud community at the moment, and he's working in the industry as well as an IT consultant. So on that note, I'd like to introduce my next guest on In Conversation With as Mr. Simon Lee. Hello, Simon. How you doing, matey?
Hey, I'm very well, John. How are you?
Yeah, awesome, mate. Just sweltering in this heat that we've got at the minute over in the UK. It's absolutely boiling. Huge thanks for joining me. Really excited to have a chat to you on the show tonight. So
yeah, definitely.
So before we get stuck into the goodness, I don't know if you want to give yourself a little bit more of an introduction. Let us know who you are, what you're up to these days. That'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Simon. Most of you all know or have seen me on Twitter under the handle of @Smoon_Lee. Originally, I was born in Birmingham, then moved up to Bradford back in 2004. Sort of went to college, did a BTEC in system support and networking, and then started out in the education sector working in a primary school. From there, progressed to an MSP, again looking after some secondary schools, doing sort of break-fix standard stuff, and then got into a little bit of sales or technical pre-sales. Then I did a stint at CDW for a bit, helping out with some projects and doing like OS deployment using SCCM. Then I've done some Windows 10 stuff at a college in Warwickshire, and that was more of like a fast track to get them out of. It was around the time where Windows 7 was going end of life, and everyone needed to move to Windows 10. So it was fast tracking their Windows 10 deployment, helping them build out with MDT and all their reference gold images. So it was great. It was like 6 months of just writing PowerShell and drinking coffee. I absolutely loved it. So I'm now based back in Bradford, and I'm working for an MSP over in Leeds at the moment, just doing general support and some project stuff here and there.
Awesome. So are you working with cloud technologies at the minute? Where are you with that right now?
Bits and pieces. So it's more like Office 365, Teams, SharePoint, like Intune. So you will have seen I've recently completed the MD 100 and 101 exams. So I'm now Modern Desktop Administrator certified, which was cool. Awesome. So that was sort of first quarter of the year. There's not that much Azure at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's predominantly on-prem, HyperV. A couple of physical servers we've still got left around, which we're trying to get away from. That's sort of what the day-to-day is like.
So I'm sensing then that your career is kind of progressing to this end-user compute arena, like you say, with some infrastructure on-prem at the moment. How's that going so you say you're working for a managed services provider at the moment. So, how are you finding that, in terms of, experience and gaining knowledge and things like that?
Sure. So with all the COVID-19 pandemic stuff, we've seen a massive transition. So we've had people who have had like predominantly on-premise RDS servers and VPNs want to lift and shift very quickly, almost trying to get it done overnight into SharePoint, and then utilize Teams. Obviously, Microsoft, when at the beginning of the pandemic came out and gave Teams away for, was it 6 months for free to like try and entice people?
They did, something like that, wasn't it?
And the traction that we had from that was amazing. We had loads of people using it, and then they were like, well, we're now all having to work remotely. We can't access the files in the office. Let's move to SharePoint. So the amount of SharePoint projects that we've seen over the last year or so have been mega. And we had so many issues with RDS servers at the beginning of the pandemic where they weren't spec'd for 90 people to be working all from home, and they just kept falling over. So at the beginning, we were looking at just putting more memory into Hyper-V hosts and buying more processors. And then like through the second lockdown, it's more moving to SharePoint.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. I think COVID, clearly it's sped up the industry no end, like you say, in terms of, businesses going from that having the majority of workforce basically in office buildings with kit that they're, is in on a local area network and it's controllable and servers on the same LAN, to all of a sudden be thrust into this kind of, we need to get everybody working from home. It's not just, I don't know about you, but I've seen it's not just about, getting access to data, the actual data itself. It's obviously the security and the networking that kind of goes along with that. So I'm guessing you've been involved in projects like that. Have you to kind of help customers through that journey?
And the amount of laptops or users that we had for 6 months away with having then trust relationship issues, we were building VPNs nearly on every site to get laptops connected back into the domain, because they go, well, I'm locked out my laptop. And so that wasn't a brilliant couple of weeks, but we worked through it, and we were spinning up like IRS servers left, right, and centre to just get people back into domains while they were all stuck working from home, and then trying to rectify offline file syncs. It was basically every possible worst nightmare that you could think of happened. And we just
I hear you. Yeah, I think I've certainly had similar experiences. I think it's kind of taken the world by storm. It's no way understating that. I think there's been so many challenges I think the IT industry has been faced with over the last 18 months that have been challenging. Like you say, you kind of run around with your hair on fire, getting things fixed in the best way that you possibly can, but equally brilliant in certain respects, because it's kind of the amount of opportunity for companies to kind of take that standpoint and look to the future in terms of technology. You mentioned 365 then. I mean, did you see a lot of your customers maybe were teetering on the edge, maybe dipping their toes in the water with 365? Did you see that kind of, we've got to get there straight away? And
we heard a lot of them using it for email.
Yeah,
but not so much for like SharePoint. And then obviously when Teams came around, it just made sense. And the pickup and take up on it was huge. And then we were doing mass like SharePoint migrations to get all the data from on-premise into Office 365. And then obviously there's file path limitations in Office. So if you're still using like Office 2013 and 2016, which some of our clients were, we then had a new battle of going, well, I can't open this folder because it's nested so far down in a folder. So it was then rectifying that, or getting them to move to Office 365, like 365 Office package, which then seems to negate that, we found. So it was a lot of lift and shift and changing of Office versions to get around stuff.
Yeah, but I'm guessing you've learned a heap over this period of time. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, I mean, how have you found that, Simon, in terms of, we work in this industry of tech and IT, and I guess working in the industry as a techie, we're used to kind of problem solving. I mean, would you say you've had to flex your muscles in any different ways over the last 18 months, or has it kind of been business as usual? What's your view on that?
It's been business as usual, but needing to be done quicker.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Definitely. I think it's just when we've had to try and condense things into a slightly tighter time frame, which is, as I'm sure you'll know, it's always fun trying to do projects when there's no time and getting things out and sorted. But
I think in my experience, I don't know, personally, I like to work under those pressured situations, because I find things actually get done. And I think looking at it from the other side of the fence, when you're, which is kind of typical of the IT industry, I think before, pre-COVID was, everything had to be rectified, designed, reviewed, security reviewed, then reviewed by a reviewer who would then review it would go through so many hoops. By the time you actually got the green light to say, right, let's get on, technology had changed. The number of customers personally I'd work with where, back in that kind of pre-cloud way, that traditional infrastructure on-prem, we'd be looking to put a product of version X in place. And by the time it gone through these, it was 1 or 2 versions higher. And all of a sudden there's better functionality. And all that would happen is somebody would go, oh, can we do that version? It's like, well, we've just spent all this time going through these review processes with security and other departments, just changing the version now. Do we kind of have to go through the same hoops? Yeah, we do. It's like, well, are we ever going to get to the point where we're doing this? So, that was my experience. And you've just summed up COVID kind of has thrust that upon pretty much every business, no doubt. And in terms of that, the learnings, I guess, that we've all gone through in being pressured and trying to learn some of these technologies, that you may not have had to do before now. I mean, you mentioned that you've done a lot with SharePoint migrations and obviously updating Hyper-V servers and virtualization platforms. Were there any skill sets in there that you kind of thought, hang on a second, need to gem up a bit of that? And how did you find that working through those kind of problems?
For some of it, as you will have seen on Twitter, I've got a mini data center, which is currently hosted at my parents' garage, which is a mixed blessing. So for the most part, if there was something that I needed to try out or wanted to try out as like proof of concept before we did it into production, I'd go spend a couple of hours on an evening standing up a test environment, run it out in the POC, go, it's either worked great, let's go do this in prod, or it's gone horrendously wrong, let's rebuild and try again. So it was a lot of like test and development and trying to see what was best fit.
I mean, that's quite interesting, actually, that you mentioned that, because obviously, the YouTube channel that we're putting this onto is, well, it's being streamed over Azure Live, and it's, my channel's called Cloud Computing. And it's one of those things where I remember back sort of 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was very much a thing that as IT consultants and IT pros, we would absolutely hoard all of this kit and we would stand it up and set, like you say. And I mean, what are your experiences like? Because I'm assuming the company you work for probably didn't pay for that kit, did they?
No.
I mean, what would your advice be to anybody in that industry now, still working under those, sort of situations in terms of that? Have you got any advice or hints or tips?
Yeah. So when I started out, so I've only been my IT career is still pretty young. I've only been in the game for about 5 or 6 years. Okay. So I sort of started around like Server 2008 R2 on Windows 7. So I predominantly learned everything through labbing. And then I wanted to learn about clustering. So I started out back in the days of when Zen Server was still a thing by Citrix.
Yeah. Okay.
So I sort of played around with that and then made the change to VMware ESXi and then coupled that with VMware Workstation on my PC and played around with sort of that sort of virtualization. But because I'm slightly backwards, so I like to, it sounds really stupid, but I like to go home and pretend that I've got like an enterprise scale set of servers, which I've now got. I've got a 2-node Hyper-V cluster I've now got that's running. And most people are like, you're just crazy. Why do you want to go home after spending 8 hours in the office putting stuff back together and fixing stuff to then go home and do the same thing? And I was like, because that's what I do. That is me. And it's taught me so much. So I've learned about like VLANing, tagging. I've now built umpteen number of Hyper-V clusters from tearing this down and rebuilding it. But then there's like other people who go, well, you could do the same with a desktop PC. And yeah, you can. And I guess it depends on how much money you want to invest into it. So at the moment, obviously, as I mentioned, the rack of servers is in my parents' house because I'm currently renting a 2-bed apartment. And there is no space left in this office to put a 24U rack with servers in. It would just melt the room as like it is today already, just from the sun. But sort of my plan is, as and when I get to buying the house stage, I'm going to bring that rack with me, and then it'll be used for like a media center and home automation stuff further down the line. So it was kind of done as like a long-term investment thing. But yeah, like for someone who was wanting to start out, if they were wanting to go down the on-premise route because it was cheaper, if you wanted to buy a rack of servers, let's say go to eBay, you can pick up. So I've got some Dell R620s that were about 300 quid when I bought them, and they were 64 gig of RAM, 2 like 3.6 gigahertz processors. So I've got like 32 cores. running Hyper-V 2019 in RAID 1, and then I bought an R720 XD, filled it full of not SSDs. I'd like SSDs, but I'm not that rich. So it's got a mix of like some SAS disks in there and some 72K disks, and it's just running FreeNAS at the moment, just being used as a nice fuzzy target.
Right, cool. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And it works.
So you're running, like you say, you're running Hyper-V cluster on there, running a few VMs and just using it for your lab environment. Like you say, when you know that you've got something coming up, you'll stand it up, tear it down, pull it apart, and just get to grips with what it is. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I suppose. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Simon.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and then there is like some kind of semi-production stuff on there. So the blog that I've got at the moment, the Hyper-V Lab blog, is all hosted from there. So it's running on a Ubuntu VM. And then my dad's got some student property that we look after, and it's now all got managed Unify, like access points in and networked in, and the controller is also running off there, so he can now, from the app on his phone, log in and check all the Wi-Fi performance speeds from that, which he absolutely loves.
Yeah, putting it to good use then. Got your own mini cloud, effectively.
Basically. Yeah.
I mean, on that note, taking it forward, Simon, have you thought about kind of the hybrid approach now with, turning the focus slightly towards sort of cloud services and things like that? Is that on your radar maybe to start looking at getting things like Azure Arc set up and installed and having to play with that? Is that where you potentially go?
Yeah, definitely. So over sort of the last, I'd say probably over the last year of COVID, I've made that mental shift of going, well, on-premise is great. And it's cheaper from a lab perspective. It's definitely cheaper than trying to run things in Azure. And I know like you can build them and tear them down. But if you want just something that you can leave running for a week and not cost you a load of money, I think at the moment buying like a server or a desktop and just having it running in the corner of a room is ideal for getting out and starting. But there's definitely, I'm seeing from a personal perspective, I'm seeing a career shift. I'm sort of not done with on-premise stuff, but I want to move to the cloud because that's where obviously we all know it's going. And with everything from COVID, working with cloud and having the ability to look at remote working, definitely is something that I want to look into.
Yeah, I see where you're going there because I agree, to be honest. I think, you stick a business hat on at the moment, and I know sometimes we'll talk about community in a minute, but I know sometimes when you are in the community talking about the latest and greatest features and functionality in cloud services, it's all well and good and brilliant. But then sometimes you look back at actually who are the businesses that you're working with. And in my experience, a lot of those businesses still are very much, yes, they may have a footprint in cloud services in some respect, whether that's, SaaS applications or a little bit in Azure or AWS. But we've still got that traditional on-prem environment that kind of, lots of businesses are looking to cloud or multi-cloud, but certainly hybrid is where we are today. And I agree with how, the discussions and the kind of ways have gone is that hybrid mentality. And I think you've summed up some of the reasons why. I think sometimes it's, if you've got that investment in physical hardware and kits, and look, let's face it, lots of businesses have put those capital expenditure investments in over the last few years. Pre-COVID, I'm sure there's loads of businesses that have spent, hundreds of thousands of pounds, with new SANs, new network switches, new storage, whatever it may be. So they're not just going to pick them up and throw them out the window, So I think you're right. Well, if they are, you'd be outside ready to catch it. Yeah,
pretty much. I should be there with a van going. I shall take them, look after them, and install them, and have some fun. Definitely. But I think as well from like a traditional standpoint, I know we've got some clients at the moment who are coming up to where their on-premise like server hardware is due for a refresh. And I think now would be a brilliant opportunity to sit down and go, well, this is what you're running on your current estate. This is what we could maybe lift and shift to Azure.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's looking to future-proof their operations. And then
yeah. No, I think there's that element of, I mean, look, this is the world I live in on a daily basis at the moment, is speaking to customers, doing those kinds of things. And it's just trying to find those justifications as to, what look, we know in tech, there's always a gazillion ways of doing the same thing. And you can kind of pick one and you can guarantee 50 people will have a different opinion, and they'll tell you why that one way you've chosen is not right. But I think it's just understanding that there are lots of variables that go into the decision making process, and it's not always about the best technical way of doing things. Because if it were, we'd all be running in some AI data center and letting the robots do our work at the moment, I guess, wouldn't we?
Yeah,
but we're not there yet. We got a lot of years yet, I think, working in that kind of traditional hybrid infrastructure, finding a good place. Does that belong in cloud? So I mean, with that in mind, what are your thoughts now over the next X amount of time from your own kind of personal development perspective? Have you got any plans to look into kind of developing those cloud skills? Are there any areas that you're looking to focus on?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of maybe looking at doing like the AZ900 and the AZ104
Sure
exams.
Thing, yeah.
Partly because I know like what Azure can do, and it might sound a little strange, but like from a high level perspective, I know what services are out there. But from a low level perspective, because I've had no actual hands-on experience with Azure yet, I don't think I'd be able to do that. So I was thinking, well, if I do the AZ900 exam, that then confirms what I think I know about like product and service wise from like a pre-sales techie point. I've got that, and then I can go do the AZ104, which will then give me the hands-on nitty-gritty deployment side of things in configuration. So that's where I'm looking at going next, and then we'll work from there.
No, I mean, it's a valid starting point. I think, anybody looking to get into Azure, it's that, like you say, that AZ900 level, that fundamental exam. I think that is the Azure Fundamentals, I think is what it's called, isn't it? Is that, it's the pitch of the level. I think you speak to some people and it's definitely technical. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely got I cast my mind back. I did it a little while back now, but lots of people I've spoken to see that as like you say, more of a pre-sales, like almost a non-technical pre-sales / sales exam to kind of have to go out and have those initial high-level conversations with customers. I mean, I'd argue, it's not all that straightforward. There are definitely some of the fundamental exams are literally, you could probably guess the answers to, because it's, if you've worked in tech for any length of time, you can work out the answers quite easily.
Yeah.
But from memory, I think that the 900 did delve into a bit of actually, would a sales or pre-sales need to know that? So I think it does delve into the techie world a little bit, but and to be honest, from my memory as well, the 104 exam wasn't a walk in the park. Not to put the fear of God into, but there was a lot. You got. It's like you say, Simon. Your experience, I think, of building your own Hyper-V lab, clustering, networking, storage. All of those things still live in the cloud, So you just you've got to understand how you do all of that, using either GUI in the portal or PowerShell or Azure command line interface. So it's not a walk in the park. There's lots of detail from memory that you kind of have to store. That's awesome. I mean, so I take it you're starting to shift your focus onto that at the moment, then, and no doubt we'll see some blogs from you in the near future. Then.
Yeah. Definitely, and it might give me an excuse to actually get some content on the YouTube channel that I've created.
I did notice that, actually. I think I was one of your first subscribers, wasn't I?
Yeah, you are. Thank you very much.
See, with no content, that's how committed I am, matey.
Yeah, exactly.
Waiting for it. So, I mean, on that point, I mean, we'll shift to kind of the community, because I know we've obviously met, during the pandemic over Twitter, as lots, there's so many cool people out there in the community, and obviously you're involved with a few friends of mine in it's the cloud management community, because they've just changed the name, haven't they, from the cloud management user group. That's it. So, but how's that going? How did you get involved with that? And what's your thoughts around that at the moment, Simon?
Sure. So, the cloud management community is myself, Dean Ellaby, Andy Jones, and Dan Stradling. It kind of came out of the blue. Dean messaged me beginning of the year, it was, just saying along the lines of, I'm thinking of setting up this user group. Would you be interested in being involved? And I was like, yes. It was like it was literally like less than a tenth of a second for me to open Twitter, see his message, and just reply yes, because I enjoy chatting with people like this and like joining with like the Welsh Azure user group. It's just great to talk to other slightly crazy, like-minded people who love tech, and we all get on. So to be given or to have the opportunity to help co-manage something like that has been brilliant.
I mean, how's it been going, since the start of the year? Because I've joined one or two of the sessions. Everything clashes, Simon. Yeah, everything is clashing at the minute, so it's crazy. So I haven't joined them all. And you've probably seen my woes on a. I think there's been a couple of Tuesdays where the user group's been on, and I'm not going to mention the mobile phone brand that I use, but it's not good. Signal drops all the time. But yeah, I mean, how are you finding it? How's it going? What kind of things have you had on there?
We've had all sorts. So the reason why we went with like the conception, which is the cloud management user group, was we're all Microsoft fanboys by the book, but we didn't want to just have it just for Azure. We wanted to be agnostic, so we could have AWS or Google Cloud Platform as well. Which we then thought it could be more of like a bigger thing going forward, sort of further down the line. But yeah, we've had some great people on. And yeah, it's from like the meetup perspective, I think we've got nearly over 200 people in there now. And on average, we're about 50 people joining.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's great to see, isn't it? I think, there's been lots of user groups. And I know you've been involved with Shabazz and the guys over at the Bradford Cloud user group. I mean, talk us through some of the things that you've been up to with Shabazz, because I know you've done a few bits and pieces with those guys.
Shabazz has been great from like a community perspective, and it's the same thing. I met Shabazz through Twitter over the pandemic, and we just hit it off. And he's been great from like a mentor and helping me out with getting started with like the MD 100 and 101 exams, and giving me lots of advice and guidance on that. And then in the supportive way that he does things, he was like, you're going to present. It wasn't a case of would you like to, it is you're going to present, you need to go find a topic, and we'll pick a date for the Bradford Cloud user group. So I was like, okay, fine. I was like, that's fine. I have no issue with that. I'm wanting to do that and get into like more of the community presenting stuff. So having just completed it at the time, I'd just done my MD 101 exam, which is for like managing Intune and all of that bit. So I was like, well, while this is all still fresh in my head, I might as well do like a slide deck and a presentation on like an overview for Intune and Autopilot, going back to, as we just touched on earlier, to do with like the hybrid transition. So if we were people wanting to move away from that MDTS, SCCM sort of on-premise deployment, and they're wanting to just buy laptops, get them shipped straight to the end user, sign in with their Office 365 credentials. So it sort of went through that, some of the licensing requirements you need around it. And then there was a couple of demos I did on, this is how you take an out-of-box Windows 10 device, enroll it into Intune, and this is what the out-of-box experience looks like. And it was great. It was really nerve-wracking, which was strange, because I was like, well, I've just done the exam. I know what I'm talking about, I think. And
I guess doing things like that, the nerves, because I'm with you. I don't do a lot of talking in user groups, and it's something that I would like to do more of, but it's not a straightforward task, I guess. So I mean, how, like you say, you were nervous, and I've heard lots of people speak about that, imposter syndrome. You know what you're talking about. But what was it for you? What was giving you those nerves, and kind of how did you find that once you got into actually starting your talk?
I think it was just from the presenting standpoint. I think it wasn't as bad because I was behind the screen. So which it felt weird, having never done like a presentation to a video camera like this. Whereas I've done stuff like in person before, and it's not so bad. But I think it's like with anything, once you get started and you're in the flow of it, then it's fine. But I think as well, for the Bradford one, because there were so many people on Twitter, because we plugged it really well, that I knew there was going to be specific people coming, which put me slightly more on edge. So I was like, they might sit there and then throw a load of curveball questions at me just for fun. Because that's what friends do when they're starting out, and they come and give you constructive help.
Absolutely.
But no, it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's great to see. I mean, have you got anything more planned with speaking, or are you going to put it on hold for a bit whilst you start looking at the cloud stuff? What's your thoughts around that?
Yes, I just need to work out what topics I'm going to do. I was thinking I might do maybe some like lightning talks around like Intune and doing like specific bits, like if you want to look at like configuring BitLocker or some of the monitoring stuff or creating policies and things like that. So I've got some things mapped out provisionally, but nothing sort of further than that yet.
Well, there we go. You're talking yourself into your next talk then. So lightning talk at the Welsh Azure user group is coming up soon. You've heard it here first. But
that's fine.
No, absolutely, matey. There's no problem. We'll get you onto one. But I think, it's that whole community thing, isn't it? I mean, I know we talk about it, and what. So for you, what is community? What is it for you? Is it just chatting on Twitter? Is it just learning tech? I mean, where do you see things with community, and how can it help other people? Do you think?
I think it's a combination of everything. I think as a community, we all get on, and I think it's because we've all got the same interests. We all like cloud stuff. We all like things by Microsoft when they work. And just like some of the conversations, and even like some of the user groups that like we'll join sort of 5-10 minutes earlier before we start the recordings, and we'll just sit and have a chat. And I think from like a COVID perspective, while we can't meet up, I think that's been really good. So when we've not been able to get out to like the pub, we've been able to just do it virtually, which I think post COVID, when we get back to whatever a normal world is, I think it just be the same as that. It's just a group of friends who all have like the same interests in the cloud, whether it be Microsoft or any other platform out there. We just have a general interest, and we all just get on.
Yeah. No, and I know we've sat down, haven't we? And I think we kicked off our cloud community thing a little while back. So I'll put a link to it in this article. But I think we're postponing it for this month because I think everybody just seems to be massively busy at the moment, and
busy in Flash.
Yeah, but absolutely.
It's like you say that Twitter stream thing that we came up with is literally it came out of a conversation of people spending far too much money. Matt Bradley being one of them. Us then egging him all on Twitter to then buy more, which went really well. And then we were just like, well, why don't we turn it into like a stream thing and then just say how much money we've spent every month on horrendously expensive tech items?
Well, absolutely, but I think it's got a point to it, hasn't it? I think at the moment because like you say, we're all working from home, and we've probably to some extent, whether we've bought ourselves a new keyboard or a new mouse, or gone to the extent of it's like some people, not naming any names, gone absolutely nuts and bought yourself new PCs and gone wild with it. Yeah. You're somewhere in between, and I guess doing that and buying these things also needs a bit of advice and recommendations, and if that comes in the form of having a bit of banter across Twitter and egging people on, then it's an expensive way to learn.
Definitely. Well, I'm pretty sure, didn't we manage to get Matt to buy like £1,000 monitor? I'm pretty sure he bought like the Alienware monitor after like a couple of like tweets and some beer. He's
obviously in a well paid job. I think he'll be watching this mortified now. But no, absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, we've reached out. We're speaking across a live stream, a recorded live stream. But these kind of things, I guess, neither of us probably would have thought about. If COVID wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Obviously, community's been around for a long time. Long before both of us have been in the industry. But I guess, for me, that's what's changed from, the negativity that COVID's had on effect, not just to us as individuals, but globally. Actually, you take the positives out of it, and actually it started to form these virtual communities. Now, all of a sudden, me, you, others that we know now, we kind of, there's a big group of us, not just in the UK, but in European countries, over in the States. Yeah, it's going to be cool if you're lucky enough to kind of get to go to some of the big events. Either in the UK or internationally, then, that's what I'm looking forward to now, to be honest, is actually starting to meet up with a few of the people that we've all been speaking to and like you say, having that beer and sitting down and chewing the fat, so to speak. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, in terms of community, have you got anything else coming up in the pipeline with anything you're working on at the moment and anything that's caught your eye in the community? things that you're looking to dip into?
I've been having some conversation with some people. I'll keep it brief because it's not confirmed yet, but there's a possibility of like so obviously I've done the AVD Zero to Hero series with Shabazz.
Sure.
So I've been speaking to some other people about maybe doing like a bicep similar style of content with Chris Reddington.
Nice. Yeah. Cool.
So we're sort of in the process of working out how that would look and what it would be from like a shamelessly plugged.
well, I'll have to tag Freak Berson in there. So yeah, Freak's book came out. I noticed a few people across the community had gone out and bought that. So that'll be a cool one. Yeah.
So that's in the pipeline at the moment, and we'll see where that ends up.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. And, like you say, it's just getting involved, doing either live streams or a few videos on that. And look, it's helping. I'm guessing, like me, it helps you out as a individual, but equally you're recording it and putting it back out there for other people to kind of pick up that knowledge as you're picking it up, or, whatever it is that you've got to say. That's absolutely
very
brilliant.
Much so, because I've found that I'm in the position going, well, I don't know about this, so I'm willing to be a guinea pig. Someone else can pass the knowledge on to me, and at the same time, we can then create some content out of it to help other people. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I think that's partly what it's all about, isn't it? It's just helping yourself, helping you to help other people as well, which is, it's a cool concept. And like I say, for years, I've always frittered around the edges of this community thing, and I'd never really understood what it was. And it was only like I started blogging and doing a bit more back beginning of last summer. And I think within a couple of months, the penny dropped. It's like, right, okay, I'm starting to get, friendly with other people across Twitter. You're putting blogs out. You're having, like you say, you're meeting like-minded people, and just all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like it's not a laborious task. Like we're now sat here. It's what? I mean, it's closing in on 8:30 at the moment at night. We both finished our day jobs a few hours ago, but This isn't the task. This is a great little social chat that we're having, and record it. And, if people get something out of it, then great. If not, well, got a nice little video that we can show in a few years' time and complain about our haircuts and how terrible my beard looked and stuff like that, But no, that's cool. So, I mean, in terms of that, so it's great to hear, your kind of the starts, I guess. I wouldn't say it's a start of cloud journey. You've been using 365 for a significant period of time. But I suppose that as your journey, is it fair to say you're at a relatively early stage of your journey in that term? Yeah. So that's going to be cool. Looking forward to seeing what you're going to get up to with that, to be honest. So that'll be cool to see. I mean, in terms of tech, so we talked about cloud. Have you set your vision any further forward? So, we've gone from that on-prem infrastructure. We've talked a bit about the cloud platform that you're going to break into. We talked about hybrid. What's next? What is the purpose of this cloud thing in your view at the minute, Simon? Where do you see it all going? What's the next big thing?
I think going forward, it'll be fully cloud. So, obviously, Microsoft has just released their new Windows 365 platform. So I think everything will be stored in the cloud, and you'll be able to access anything from everywhere. And then with the time with AI stuff, if they get it right, I think it could be really cool. And it'll make, from a business perspective, I think it'll change the game indefinitely. And from a consumer's perspective, I think there'll be some really cool toys and gadgets coming out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I don't know about you, but things just seem to be. I remember the announcement from Satya Nadella. It was probably around about 2015, 2016. I was lucky enough to get to go over to Atlanta for the Ignite conference back then. And I remember back then the announcement was, clearly it was about empowering people to do more effectively, empowering businesses to be able to do more. And at the time, I must admit, it was like, okay, yeah, that's just a thing, And he started mentioning this thing, tech intensity. And I thought, tech intensity, I have to do quite a lot at the moment to stay on top of tech, to learn and know things at a deep level. And I look back at those statements now and I think, right, okay, I completely understand what he's talking about now. Because, I mean, how do you cope? my point of view is there's so much that you could learn. There's so much that you could go off onto this meandering path. And, you know, if you followed my blog and seen some of the things that I've been up to, you'll know I'm very much all over that kind of journey.
Yeah.
How do you view that, Simon? And what's your thoughts about how you're going to cope with that and you know, moving forward with your own career?
It's an interesting one because, like what as you've just touched on, I like to know a lot about a little. No, other way around. I like to know about a lot of areas.
A lot.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But then, like, when I've spoken to people at work, they're like, "Oh, you should just become like a specialist in one area," which you could say, "Well, do you become a cloud specialist?" But as we both know, cloud is too big. You cannot ever learn all of it, especially across the 3 vendors. So it's an interesting one. I haven't fully worked out where I want to go yet. So I know that
it's cool hearing you say that at the minute, because it's. Yeah. I don't think anybody's worked it out yet. Is my opinion. No. I don't think anybody has. So I just wanted to hear.
So far is I think I finished with my on-premise phase. I think from a career starting point, it's brilliant for people who are just getting into IT and are wanting to understand like how networks are built and how servers work. And I've now done that. I've got a good understanding of how like enterprise networking and switching and all that hangs together, and I'm now ready for the next step.
Yeah, and I've had chats with, well, you'll know if you've watched some of the other videos with other guests, is I've had chats around that whole, okay, if you're new, young, straight out of university, taking your first job in tech, almost kind of, do you need that experience? Do you need that core experience? And look, there's no right or wrong answer here, but it's just, what does that experience and actually mean when you move to the cloud? And I was speaking with a guest before, and they were saying, well, look, there are those core things that you kind of need to know, really. Yeah. And then you apply them, like things like networking, things like storage and compute, the kind of basics of what IT is effectively. And I guess you learn the cloud way of doing those things. So, I guess it's actually getting those skills again isn't any sort of straightforward. It's not like you can just, I know there's some great content on things like Microsoft Learning and other community members, but that takes a lot of time and investment. So I guess, how are you finding that whole, I know you mentioned that you've done your MD 100 and 101 exams recently. How did you find that process with studying for those exams? Was that, did that take you a fair amount of time? Was it something you found relatively easy and quick?
Yes, it took a lot of time because at the time there was a lot of other things I was doing. So I had to make that mental transition of going, if I want to do these exams, I have to clear my diary, clear my calendar, and just go dark, apart from Twitter. And then just focus on it. And Twitter was great because I could reach out to people who had just done the exam or who was looking at sitting it going, well, what resources are you using? And for the most part, I ended up using Pluralsight, Microsoft Learn, various other people's like blog posts that from what they'd done on what they'd use for study guides, and I just built a load of labs, and then set up an Office 365 subscription. I just labbed as much as I could, and went from there. And then just spent like a couple of hours. Then on weekends, I'd spend like a morning doing stuff, and then go out, get some fresh air, see some sunshine, and then come back in and do some more.
So how long do you think it took you from kind of actually starting to look at the skills measured in the exam?
For MD 100, it was very on and off. So I probably started in about July last year, but it was very on off. So I'd sort of maybe look at it, do a bit, and then it was only probably just before Christmas when I decided I'm going to book the exam at the end of February. Sort of made the conscious decision that I'd get Christmas out of the way, and then from the beginning of January, I would try and cram in like 2 or 3 nights a week, doing like 2 hours on and off of just like either revision, practice questions, and then labs. But then speaking of like doing stuff like this, Gregor Sutty, you might have heard, there was a stage last year where I think he did like 6. It was like 6 exams in 6 months. and he was doing 2 hours a night, and he sold his Xbox. And I was like, that's kind of what I used as my baseline. Going, well, if I can do that, great. And you can manage it for the first couple of days, and you just go, I've now got brain fatigue and brain rot, and nothing's going in, and I've got a headache and migraine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I think, and everyone learns differently. So I think it's a case of you just have to try it and work out what the best thing is. So then when I got around to doing MD 101, it was a case of I'd break it up. So I'd do some labs, some research, some practice questions, and have a couple of days off. Or if there was an area that I wasn't so sure about, I'd go read some Microsoft Docs on that, do some labs, and then go back and review some of the test questions I've done to go, sure, well, this is now why I understand it. Or if I didn't understand it, work on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it goes back to that other point that you were saying earlier, when, if you come from that kind of traditional infrastructure kind of background, that support background, I think I'm probably the same as you in terms of you want to know a lot about a lot of different things. Yeah. And I think in the on-prem world, it was far easier to become that subject matter expert in a particular field because things didn't change so quickly. We had that kind of, cadence of, update release, whatever it might be over the, every quarter, whatever they ended up being on certain Microsoft products. But certainly, main product features would be upgraded every couple of years. So for the main kind of core products, you'd get the good understanding, the grounding of what the services that you're actually deploying and configuring. And then, you try and keep up with the updates as they came out, which, when you factor in what it's like in the cloud now, and I think the way I look at it is that you've got to have that breadth of knowledge, because now all of a sudden to become that subject matter expert in one thing isn't necessarily possible with the cloud, because all of a sudden now you've got to understand networking, storage, compute, as well as the application layer, because that's kind of what you're there doing and deploying. It's not like you can have all of these different people, these subject matter experts, all huddled around a computer configuring cloud services. So I think they say kind of being, you've got these forms, but being T-shaped, or being N-shaped or M-shaped, where you've got that breadth of knowledge across the cloud platform, the end-to-end, the capabilities, but then you pick the drop downs where you are actually that subject matter expert. And I think I've heard it labeled up as like a specialist generalist. So so it used to be, if you were a generalist, you had that kind of label of jack of all trades, master of none, almost, which I never kind of agreed with, really, because you end up being that glue that kind of helps people who are those subject matter experts but don't have the breadth of knowledge. You help them understand where their bit fits. But that's almost like what's coming, isn't it? Do you see it like that with cloud technologies?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, you need to have an understanding, or at least a high level understanding of how everything sort of hangs together, and then you can reach out to other people. But we'll see. But I think having an understanding of sort of how all the services can hang together and connect definitely helps.
Yeah, and clear your diary and stay up to date with the Azure updates every week, isn't it? Really, I think is as best you can. But no, that's awesome, Simon. It's been super fun having a chat with you this evening. Definitely. Any parting comments, any words of wisdom you want to throw back out there into the community before we wrap up this call?
I'd say for people who are wanting to get out there and get started, either in an IT career or a cloud career, Twitter's the place to be. I use it far more than LinkedIn. Just for some of the connections that I've made over the last year have been brilliant. And it's a great social media tool, which I know that's really ironic because that's what Twitter was designed for. But from a community standpoint, and for keeping up to date with everything that changes in Azure every week, there's loads of people posting about it. So it's, Twitter's the way to be.
I echo those comments. I think it's, just get involved, isn't it? Just get involved. Make yourself known. Reach out to people. Say hello. And obviously, your handle is on the screen. We'll put some links to your blog and your YouTube channel that obviously we're going to expect to see some content now. I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Get stuck in. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're going to get up to now. So, I think you'll be on the community, that cloud community thing fairly soon, telling us how much money you've spent on kit.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll be the next one now. So watch out. Well, that's awesome, matey. That's awesome. No. Thanks so much for joining me on this one. Yeah. No, absolutely, and we'll say hello across Twitter fairly soon, I guess.
Indeed. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, cheers, Simon. Speak to you soon.